I have a note that is attributed to Deepak Chopra that says, once you begin describing, you've left awareness. I couldn't verify that he had said that. I either heard it in an interview or Mr. Chopra does talk a lot about and teach a lot about awareness, so it's like things he would be saying. I find that a lot of people misunderstand the nature of the world, or at least from my point of view. That's all I can give. We believe that knowledge and information is the same thing. And that's not even to speak of wisdom, which I will not be. But I'm going to concentrate on information and knowledge for just a second here. There's tons and tons and tons of information, and even if you have tons and tons of information that you can recollect from the files in your brain, does not mean you have any knowledge whatsoever. Knowledge is experiential and it's energetic. It's located in your body. It is your body. Your body is a structure of knowledge. You can only have knowledge from your experience. And the difference between information and knowledge is you can describe perfectly how to ride a bike. You may have read a book about how to ride a bike. You may be able to explain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down to the detail. But until you get on the bike and can pedal and stay upright, you don't have any knowledge whatsoever. And in this sense, knowledge is very personal to the person living, because each person has their set of knowledge that comes from their set of experiences. And this is why you cannot, you can challenge other people's information because it's based on just cultural bits floating through our communication systems, whatever they happen to be, books or whatever, the social media, whatever. You can challenge people's information whether or not they're lining up to what the culture's been collecting, but you can't really challenge people's knowledge because they've got it through blood, sweat, and tears. All you can do is listen to their knowledge and see where they're coming from and how they arrived at their knowledge. The other thing about knowledge is that it's creative. Information can just, again, sit in the files, but knowledge produces something. It produces you, who you are. Your knowledge produces who you are. It produces, riding a bike produces exercise and the effects of exercise and the effects of accomplishment and the effects of freedom riding down the road. There's something creative about knowledge because you're living it. Knowledge is always lived. And then whatever knowledge you're living also produces the experience that more experiences that you're having. And then, of course, it solidifies the knowledge or opens up new vistas of possible knowledge because knowledge is always creative. The reason that I go into this, this has a lot of personal application to your personal healing. But I want to think about this in terms of how we relate to one another in the world and relate to the information that's in the world, especially as it relates to how the choices that we're going to be making in the creation of the world that we're all participating in, and the way that we look at people and deal with people, and how we've come to states of war and conflict and states of poverty and those kinds of things, because all of that experience of poverty and war and anything else you want to add into their disease, this is a production or a symptom of the level of our knowledge, not the level of our information, because the level of our information is way up here. We've got tons of information. It's all here on the planet. You can find out anything. But our knowledge is we're in a famine of knowledge because the knowledges that we're operating from are resulting in our wars and our poverty and our disease, and add in whatever else you want. I don't use the term awareness a lot. So I'm not in the same kind of terminology as Mr. Chopra. But the thing that I like to say is we each need to live in the here and the now. And that's all there is. Really, the only thing that your knowledge is from your here and now. You know what your house looks like. You know your family. If you do know them, sometimes people don't get to know each other even in their families, but you know what the fragrances of the air that you're around smells like. You know what the order, things that are happening in the order of your day. You know what your neighbor, the experiences that you've had with your neighbor. And I invite you to do that exercise of just, I go stand on my porch, especially like to do it in the morning. And I remind myself of what it is that I know that is here and now with me, like immediately, my immediate surroundings. And I live in high country Arizona, and beautiful nature here with beautiful sky. If you look down, it's a lot of dirt and scrub and weeds, but looking up into the sky is just spectacular. And there's certain kind of birds I hear every morning, and I look at my old car there, and I look at my cute little yellow house, and I remind myself of what's here. And that is all I know. Now, when I go out of the places, when I go to the school, when I go to the church, when again, the things I know are expanded beyond my front porch, but it's a reminder that the things I know and I'm actually experiencing are actually very limited. And that's a good thing. You need to remind yourself of what it is you actually know. Okay, now, everything else that you think you know is just information. And you don't know it at all. It's just a description that you've been invited to lay hold upon. And it is outside of your knowledge. Like when you flip on YouTube and listen to a whole bunch of YouTube's videos on a subject, and I'm talking about listening to me too. The only thing you can do, like if you listen to people, is you can get ideas of possible experiences you could have and try out maybe, or see if it works and see if it's creative to lead you to the thing that you want to be creating. But it's not an actual experience. Just because you've listened to a bunch of YouTube videos doesn't mean you have any knowledge whatsoever. Just the ideas of knowledge. And people mix that up all the time. Just because you've listened to news, if you've listened to news and you haven't actually been to the country the news is about, you have absolutely no knowledge. Zero. Unless you've met someone from that country and let them tell you their experiences. So here's the thing, you can have your own experiences and they're being cataloged and lived and they're producing the life that you're living. You can have, and then you can immediately meet people within your actual field of experience, people that you've actually met, your family, your neighbor, and you can hear them tell you about their experiences, and you can honor their experiences, or you may not agree with all their choices, but you can see where they're coming from, right? See at least how it was for them. So that's also not your knowledge, but it's a more direct sense of other people's knowledge. And anything beyond that, if you haven't lived it yourself or had a direct personal conversation with someone else, you know nothing. And this is a good thing. This is something you have to remember. You have to remember what you do not know. If you're listening to news or going to school, learning things at school, or unless it's very interactive, you can have experiences and knowledge at school too, but reading a book even, you can have the experience of reading the book, but until you've done, and you can have experiences that, the book touched your life or whatever, that is an experience, but the actual bits of information in things are not, even things like the Bible. The only way the Bible is true is if you read something and then live it, and if it's creative for you, if it takes you where you want to go in your life. Then you have knowledge of the Bible only by living. You can't have knowledge of the Bible by reading. That's information. And not that all information is bad, because you can start with information as your beginning place of gaining knowledge, but you have to understand what you do and do not know. And why I'm taking so much time on this is because people are so certain. They're so certain, and they think that faith is certainty, which is another subject. I don't know why I bring that up, but if you're certain about something, you have no faith, because you have to. And if you've watched the news about things, or if you care about something, if you want to know who is your enemy, if that's important to you, or you want to know about wars, or you want to know about disease or poverty or economics, you have to seek experience. You have to seek those conversations with real people. And it takes time. And it takes more time than people, especially in our day and age, are willing to do. And I'm talking about myself. We want the soundbite. And then we think we know something, and we know nothing. And I just want to remind you that you don't know as much as you think you know, because you're behaving on your information, and you're creating perspectives on your information, and you're not creating perspectives and creating things. You're not doing it from your knowledge. You need to pull back. And here and now is the experience of something is very immediate, and it has no words. Experience has no information in it. As soon as you start talking, like you want to tell a story about your experience, the describing, you've left the here and now, and you've left the experience. And it doesn't mean it's bad, because stories are awesome, but you have to understand what it is and is not. The minute I say, I had a wonderful time at my grandma's house, that's one sentence, and it covers 3 days of experience and knowledge. All kinds of details and nuance are missing. It cannot be carried in the words. It's like missing whole swaths of actual experience. And of course, no one else can have that experience unless they go to their grandma's house. And then they can only have their experience. It's going to be maybe a little bit the same, a little bit different, or a lot the same, a lot different. But the knowledge can only be your knowledge. Even if you seem like you have the same knowledge, like about a religion or about love or things like that. Everyone is having their personal experience of that, and it is not the same. And as soon as we start talking about it with each other, again, it's not horrible. For example, the things that are imparted through poetry and music, this is very beautiful stuff, but it has its limitations. And you have to understand that. And the reason why I've taken so long to talk about this is applicable both in terms of your personal life and how you conduct it, and whether or not you're being successful or happy or peaceful, or if you feel like you're in a disaster every moment. You probably are like out in your information and out in your description, and you aren't in the here and now and the awareness and trusting your experience. But this is even more important as we look out at the larger world that has become wider through our technology and our communications. And we have to be very, very careful about what we say that we know, because I can promise you most of the things people are talking that they're certain about, that they think they know, are not. It's just a bunch of information, and you can get lost in that and die from it. And the knowledge that we do have, again, is producing our world. So if you don't like parts of our world, the economy or the conflict and the disease, it's because we're just swimming and drowning in our information, and we're not living from knowledge, and we're not honoring and respecting the knowledge that we need to produce something. And you cannot do knowledge for other people. You can only do knowledge for yourself. It's a personal agency and decision you make, and you create and live from your world based on your knowledge. So you can't do that work for someone else. If you don't like what someone else is doing, it's really none of your business. You cannot do them. You can only do you. And when you create a peaceful you based on peaceful knowledge, and really limit the information that you respect. I mean, information could be good, but just be careful that how you're respecting that, and understand the difference between a description in a story and information, and the here and now and your knowledge and what you're living. And if you can make that distinction and understand, you'll be a lot more careful about the dangerous, and some information is so dangerous because we're taking that information and going from it as if it was knowledge, and it's not. You know nothing. Okay? Thanks for listening.